Welcome back to Bargirl Baddies. Today we're sharing the story of a man who thought he'd found everything he was looking for in Thailand. Love, purpose, a fresh start, and the family he'd always wanted. His name is Marcus, he's 29, from Perth, Australia, and what started as a romantic escape became something he never saw coming. By the time he realised what was happening, it was already too late. Before we dive in, drop a comment and let us know where you're watching from, and if you've ever trusted someone only to realise you were living in a fantasy. And if this story resonates, hit that subscribe button, because we're just getting started. Here's what Marcus sent us. I'll be honest with you. I wasn't running from anything dramatic. No divorce, no bankruptcy, no dead-end job that crushed my soul. At least, not in the way you'd imagine. I was just tired. Tired of feeling like I was going through the motions. I worked in mining logistics back in Perth. Good money. Stable. Boring as hell. I'd wake up, drive to the office, stare at spreadsheets, go to the gym, eat dinner alone, watch something on Netflix, and do it all again the next day. Weekends were beers with mates who talked about the same things every single time. Football. Work. Women they weren't actually dating. I was 29, and I felt 50. Then there was the breakup. Her name was Laura. We'd been together 3 years. She wanted marriage, kids, a house in the suburbs. I wanted all of that too, in theory. But every time she brought it up, I'd freeze. I didn't know why. Maybe I wasn't ready. Maybe I didn't love her the way I thought I did. Either way, she left. Said I was emotionally unavailable. She wasn't wrong. After that, I felt even more invisible. Like I was this ghost in my own life, just floating through days that didn't mean anything. One night, my mate Dave showed me this YouTube video, some British bloke living in Chiang Mai, talking about how he paid 300 quid a month for a nice apartment, ate like a king for cheap, and spent his days working remotely by a pool. The guy looked relaxed, happy, alive. I watched more videos. Expats in Bangkok. Retirees in Pattaya. Digital nomads in the islands. They all said the same thing. Life's better here. It's slower. It's warmer. People smile. You can actually afford to live. I started dreaming about it. At first, it was just a fantasy, something I'd think about during lunch breaks, but the idea stuck. I had savings. I had no mortgage, no kids, no real ties. So one Friday, after a particularly soul-crushing week at work, I walked into my boss's office and quit. He looked at me like I'd lost my mind. Maybe I had. 2 weeks later, I was on a plane to Bangkok. The first thing that hit me when I landed was the heat. It was like stepping into a wet blanket. The air smelled like exhaust fumes, fried garlic, and something sweet I couldn't name. I took a taxi into the city and just stared out the window the whole way, motorbikes weaving through traffic, street vendors grilling skewers under umbrellas, neon signs in Thai script glowing against the dark sky. It felt chaotic and beautiful and completely overwhelming. I checked into a hostel in Sukhumvit, dropped my bag, and walked outside. Within 10 minutes, I was sweating through my shirt. Within an hour, I was sitting at a street-side bar drinking a cold Singha, watching the city move around me. I felt awake for the first time in years. I spent 2 weeks in Bangkok just wandering. I didn't have a plan. I'd wake up, grab pad krapao from a cart, and walk until my feet hurt. I visited temples, got lost in markets, sat by the river, and watched long tailboats cut through the brown water. I talked to other travellers in hostels. Everyone had a story. A German guy who'd been travelling for 2 years. An American girl teaching English. A Canadian couple who sold everything and bought one-way tickets. I started to think maybe I could do this. Maybe I could stay. After Bangkok, I took a bus up to Chiang Mai. I'd heard it was cheaper, quieter, more laid back. The moment I arrived, I knew I'd found my place. The old city was surrounded by a moat and ancient walls. The air smelled like jasmine and incense. There were temples on every corner, cafes full of foreigners tapping away on laptops, and night markets that stretched for blocks. I rented a small studio apartment near Nimmenhamen Road for about 400 Australian dollars a month. It had a bed, a fan, a tiny kitchen, and a balcony that looked out over a tangle of rooftops and palm trees. It wasn't much, but it felt like mine. I wasn't looking for a relationship. I really wasn't. I'd come to Thailand to reset, to figure out who I was outside of work and routines and expectations. But loneliness has a way of creeping in, even when you're surrounded by people. I'd spend my days exploring, working odd remote gigs online, reading in cafes. But the nights were harder. I'd see couples holding hands at the night market, families eating together at street stalls, and I'd feel this ache I couldn't name. I missed being wanted. I missed mattering to someone. That's when I met Ploy. It was a Thursday night. I'd gone to a small bar near the old city, nothing fancy, just a local spot with cheap beer and a pool table. I wasn't trying to meet anyone. I just wanted to get out of my apartment. She was sitting at the bar by herself, scrolling through her phone. She had this quiet presence, like she wasn't trying to be noticed. Dark hair pulled back in a ponytail. Simple clothes, no heavy makeup. She looked up and caught me staring. I smiled, embarrassed. She smiled back. I don't even remember how the conversation started. I think I asked if the seat next to her was taken. She said no. We started talking. Her English was pretty good, better than my Thai, which was almost non-existent. She told me her name was Ploy, she was 26, she worked part-time at a guest house and studied business at night school. She was from a small village in Isan, up in the northeast, but she'd been in Chiang Mai for a few years. She asked what I was doing in Thailand. I told her the truth. Running away from a boring life. Trying to figure things out, she laughed and said she understood. She said a lot of people come to Thailand looking for something. We talked for hours. She didn't flirt aggressively like some of the other girls I'd seen in bars. She didn't ask where I was from or how much money I made. She just listened. Really listened. She asked about my family, my life back home, what made me happy. I found myself opening up in a way I hadn't in months. When the bar started closing, I didn't want the night to end. I asked if she wanted to grab food. She said yes. We walked to a late-night street stall and ordered khao man gai, poached chicken over rice with a spicy sauce. We sat on plastic stools under a fluorescent light, and I watched her eat, laughing at something I'd said. She had this way of tilting her head when she smiled, like she was deciding whether or not to trust you. I was fascinated by her. She seemed real, grounded, not performing for me, just being herself. We exchanged line IDs before we said goodnight. I walked home through the empty streets, feeling something I hadn't felt in a long time. Hope, not the desperate kind, just the quiet belief that maybe things could be good again. We started seeing each other regularly after that. She'd message me in the mornings. Good morning, with a little emoji. We'd meet for coffee, walk around the moat, visit temples, sit by the river and talk. She told me about her family. Her mother was sick, some kind of chronic illness that required medication. Her father had passed away when she was young. She had a younger brother still in school. She sent money home when she could, but it was never enough. She talked about her dreams. She wanted to open a small cafe one day. Something simple. Good coffee, homemade pastries, a quiet space where people could relax. She said it with such sincerity that I believed every word. I started falling for her. Hard. It wasn't just attraction, though she was beautiful. It was the way she made me feel seen. Like I wasn't just another foreigner passing through. She remembered things I told her. She asked how my day was and actually cared about the answer. She didn't rush anything. We didn't sleep together for weeks. When we finally did, it felt meaningful. Like we were building something real. By the third month, I'd moved in with her. She had a small apartment on the outskirts of the city, cheaper than mine, but cozy. One room, a bathroom, a little kitchenette. We made it work. I paid the rent, she cooked. We split everything else. It felt natural, domestic. I'd wake up to the smell of rice porridge and coffee. She'd kiss me on the forehead before leaving for work. I'd spend the day freelancing. Then we'd meet up in the evening, ride her scooter to the night market, eat pad thai from a cart, and talk about the future like it was something we were building together. She never asked me for money directly. That felt important. I'd heard stories from other expats about bar girls, scams, women who bled foreigners dry. But Ploy wasn't like that. She worked. She studied. She was independent. If I offered to help with something, she'd hesitate, like she didn't want to be a burden. That made me want to help more. I started covering her phone bill, groceries, little things. It didn't feel like I was being used. It felt like I was being a good partner. Then, one night, maybe 4 months in, she told me her mother needed money for treatment. Some kind of specialist appointment in Bangkok. She showed me a message from her brother, written in Thai. I couldn't read it, but she translated. It sounded serious. She said she didn't know how she was going to pay for it. She started crying. I held her and told her not to worry. I sent the money the next day. She cried again, this time out of relief. She said I was the best thing that had ever happened to her. My savings were thinning, but I wasn't worried. I was happy. I had purpose. I mattered. We started talking about the future more seriously. She said she wanted a life with me. Maybe a little house outside the city, a garden, a quiet life. And then one night, after we'd been drinking rice whiskey with her friends, she said something that stopped my heart. Maybe one day we have baby. She said it casually, like she was testing the water. I looked at her, and she looked at me, and I saw it in her eyes. She meant it. I'd never thought about being a father before, not seriously, but sitting there, in that tiny apartment, with this woman who made me feel alive, I thought maybe I could do it, maybe I could be good at it. A few weeks later, she told me she thought she was pregnant. I was sitting on the edge of the bed when she said it. She was holding a test in her hand, but she wouldn't show it to me yet. She looked terrified. I asked her if she was sure. She nodded. My mind went blank, then it started racing. Pregnant. A baby. My baby. Our baby. I felt panic, then excitement, then something I can only describe as overwhelming tenderness. I pulled her close and told her it was okay. I told her we'd figure it out. I told her I'd take care of her. She cried into my chest and said she wanted to keep it. She said she wanted to build a life with me. I'd never felt more needed in my entire life. Everything changed after that night. Not all at once. Not in some dramatic explosion. It was subtle. Like watching the tide pull back so slowly you don't realise you're standing on dry sand until the water's already gone. Ploy started talking about what the baby would need. A crib. Clothes. Diapers. Vitamins for her. Better food. A safer place to live. She said our apartment was too small, too far from the hospital. She found a nicer place closer to the city centre. It was almost double the rent, but she said it was necessary. I signed the lease without hesitation. I wanted her to feel safe. I wanted to be the kind of man who took care of his family. I started selling things. My laptop got replaced with a cheaper one. I sold my camera, the one I'd bought to document my travels. I pawned a watch my father had given me for my 21st birthday. Every time I sold something, I told myself it was temporary. Just until I figured out a better income stream. Just until things stabilised. Ploy needed money for doctor visits. Ultrasounds, blood tests, supplements the doctor recommended. She'd come home with receipts, but they were always in Thai, and I couldn't read them. I trusted her. Why wouldn't I? She was carrying my child. Every time I handed over cash, she'd kiss me and tell me I was a good man, that I was going to be a great father. I lived for those words. I started borrowing money from mates back home. Small amounts at first. 100 here, 200 there. I made up excuses. Said I was investing in a business opportunity. Said I'd pay them back soon. They didn't ask too many questions. I think they were just happy I sounded like I had purpose again. I stopped going out. Stopped meeting other expats for drinks. I couldn't afford it anymore. And besides, I had responsibilities now. I spent my evenings working online gigs, writing articles for content mills, doing data entry, anything that paid. I was exhausted all the time, but I told myself it was worth it. Ploy started acting different. She was tired a lot. Moody, she'd snap at me over small things, then apologise and blame the hormones. I understood. Pregnancy was hard. I tried to be patient. She stopped wanting me to come to her clinic appointments. She said it was a cultural thing, that Thai women preferred to go alone or with their mothers. I didn't push. I didn't want to seem controlling, but it bothered me. I wanted to see the ultrasound. I wanted to hear the heartbeat. I wanted proof that this was real. One evening, I asked her when the baby was due. She got vague. Said the doctor wasn't sure yet. Said it was too early to tell. I asked to see the ultrasound photos. She said she'd left them at her mother's house. I asked why. She said her mother wanted to see them. It made sense, I guess. But something in her eyes looked off. Like she was calculating how much I'd believe. I started noticing other things. Small things. Her phone was always face down. She'd leave the room to take calls. She said it was her brother, her mother, her friends from work. But she'd speak in rapid Thai, too fast for me to catch even a single word I recognised. When I'd ask what the call was about, she'd shrug and say nothing important. I wanted to believe her. I needed to believe her. Then, one afternoon, I found a second phone. I wasn't snooping. I was looking for a charger in her bag, and there it was. A small Nokia, the kind people use for cheap local calls. I pulled it out and stared at it. My hands were shaking. I didn't open it. I just held it, feeling the weight of what it meant. When she came home, I was sitting on the bed with the phone in my lap. She froze in the doorway. I asked her whose it was. She said it was her cousin's, that she was holding on to it because the cousin couldn't afford to keep it active. I asked why it was in her bag. She got defensive. Started crying. Asked me why I didn't trust her. Said I was being paranoid. Said the stress wasn't good for the baby. I apologized. I actually apologized. I put the phone back in her bag and told her I was sorry for doubting her. She wiped her tears and kissed my forehead. I felt like a piece of shit. But the doubt had been planted. I couldn't shake it. I started paying closer attention. I noticed she wasn't showing, not really. She'd put her hand on her stomach sometimes, like she was cradling something, but there was no visible bump. She said every woman was different, that some women didn't show until later. I Googled it. She was right. I felt guilty again for doubting. 2 weeks later, she was gone. I came home from a coffee shop where I'd been working on a freelance project. It was around 6 in the evening. The apartment door was unlocked, which was strange. I walked in and immediately felt the emptiness. It's hard to explain. The air felt different. Hollow. I looked around. Her clothes were gone. Her toiletries. Her shoes. The little stuffed elephant she kept on the nightstand. Gone. The kitchen was half empty. She'd taken the rice cooker, the good knife, the blender I bought her for smoothies. I stood in the middle of the room, my heart pounding, trying to make sense of it. Maybe she went to stay with a friend. Maybe her mother got worse. Maybe there was an emergency. I tried calling her. It rang twice, then went to voicemail. I called again, straight to voicemail. I sent messages online, delivered, but not read. I waited an hour, then 2. Then all night. I didn't sleep. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at my phone, refreshing her chat over and over. Nothing. The next morning, I asked the landlord if he'd seen her. He said she'd left yesterday afternoon with 2 bags. Said she paid him something, he didn't say what, and told him she wouldn't be back. I asked if she said where she was going. He shrugged. I went to the guest house where she worked. They said she'd quit 2 weeks ago. I asked why she didn't tell me. They looked at me with pity and didn't answer. I tried to find her family. She'd given me an address once, said it was her mother's village in Isan. I took a bus. 8 hours northeast into rural Thailand. Red dirt roads, rice fields stretching forever. I found the village, showed people her photo on my phone. Most of them shook their heads. One old woman said she looked familiar, but she didn't know a family with that name. I went to the address Ploy had written down for me. It was an empty lot. Just dirt and wild grass, no house, no family, nothing. I sat on the side of the road and stared at that empty lot until the sun went down. I felt like I was losing my mind. How could everything have been a lie? The stories about her mother, her brother, the cafe dream, all of it. How could I have been so stupid? When I got back to Chiang Mai, I checked her social media, Facebook, Instagram, Line. All deleted, not deactivated. Deleted. Like she'd never existed. I asked around the expat community, showed her photo in bars, cafes, hostels. A few people recognised her. One guy, a British bloke in his 50s, pulled me aside. He said he'd seen her before. Said she used to work at a karaoke bar in the old city. Said she'd done this kind of thing before. He didn't say it with judgment. He said it gently, like he was trying to soften the blow. But it didn't matter how gently he said it. The words still landed like a punch to the gut. I met up with another guy a few days later. Australian, from Sydney. He said he dated a girl who knew Ploy, said Ploy had a reputation, that she targeted foreign men, usually younger ones who seemed lonely and naive. She'd build trust, talk about the future, and then create some kind of crisis. Pregnancy was a common one. So was a sick family member. She'd drain them slowly, then disappear before they figured it out. He said she wasn't working alone, that there was usually someone else involved. A boyfriend, a manager, someone who helped her move from city to city. I asked him if there was ever really a pregnancy. He looked at me like I'd just asked the dumbest question in the world. "Mate," he said, "there's never a pregnancy." I sat in my apartment for days after that. I didn't eat, barely slept. I kept replaying every conversation, every moment, every time she cried or told me she loved me. I searched for the truth in my memories, but I couldn't find it. Maybe she'd meant some of it. Maybe there were moments that were real, or maybe I was just desperate to believe I hadn't been completely fooled. The worst part wasn't the money. I'd lost thousands, borrowed from friends I'd now have to face and admit I'd been scammed. Sold things I couldn't get back. But the money wasn't the worst part. The worst part was realizing one had been in love with a ghost, a character she'd played, and I'd wanted so badly to believe in her that I'd ignored every single red flag. The vague answers. The second phone. The appointments I was never allowed to attend. I'd seen it all and chosen blindness. I couldn't go home, not yet. The shame was too thick. I'd quit my job, left my life, and flown halfway around the world to chase a fantasy. And I'd lost. I moved to a cheaper room in Bangkok, a shoebox near Akamai, not no windows, a fan that barely worked, cockroaches in the bathroom. I got a remote job doing customer support for a tech company, night shifts, because of the time difference. I'd work from midnight to 8 in the morning, sleep through the day, wake up, and do it again. It was numbing. I wanted to be numb. Months passed. Slowly, I started to rebuild. Not my savings. That would take years. But my sense of self. I stopped hating her. I know that sounds strange, but the anger faded, and what replaced it was something closer to sadness. I don't think Ploy was evil. I think she was desperate. I think she'd learned that survival sometimes means using people, and I think she was good at it because she'd had to be. That doesn't make what she did okay, but it makes it human. I started hating myself less too. For a long time, I thought I was an idiot, that only a complete fool would fall for something so obvious. But the truth is, it wasn't obvious. Not when you're in it. Not when you're lonely and far from home and someone makes you feel like you matter. Loneliness is a kind of hunger. And when you're starving, you don't question the meal, you just eat. I learned that love built on need isn't love. It's a transaction. And I'd been paying for something I thought was free. I learned that when someone gives you everything you've always wanted, you should ask yourself why. Not because people are inherently bad, but because desperation makes people do things they wouldn't normally do. And if you're not careful, you'll mistake their desperation for devotion. I'm still in Thailand. I don't know if I'll stay forever, but I'm not running anymore. I'm working, saving. Trying to pay back the people I borrowed from. I go to the gym. I read. I've made a few friends, real ones this time. People who don't need anything from me. I don't date. I'm not ready. Maybe I won't be for a while. And that's okay. Sometimes I think about her. I wonder where she is. Is she still doing this? If she ever thinks about me? I doubt it. I was just one name in a long list. But I think about her anyway. Not with anger. Just with a strange, sad kind of curiosity. I hope she got what she needed. I hope she's okay. And I hope someday she finds a way to survive that doesn't require breaking people. I didn't write this to get sympathy. I wrote it because I know I'm not the only one. There are guys out there right now, sitting in apartments in Chiang Mai or Bangkok or Pattaya, convinced they found something real. And maybe they have. I hope they have. But if you're reading this and something feels off, trust that feeling. Don't ignore the red flags because you're lonely. Don't mistake someone's need for love. And don't let hope turn into denial. Because hope without boundaries isn't hope. It's just another way to lie to yourself. If someone tells you they're going to give you everything you've ever wanted, ask yourself what you're really paying for, and then ask yourself if you can afford it. Not just financially, but emotionally. Because some prices are too high, even when you think you're getting exactly what you need. Marcus's story is one we hear more often than you'd think. And the hardest part is that he's not a fool. He's not an idiot. He's just human. He was vulnerable, far from home, and desperate to feel like he mattered, and someone saw that vulnerability and used it. That doesn't make him weak. It makes him normal. Because we all want to be loved. We all want to be needed. And when someone offers us that, especially when we're lonely, it's almost impossible not to reach for it. But here's the thing. Real love doesn't ask you to ignore your instincts. It doesn't require you to turn a blind eye. It doesn't make you feel crazy for asking questions. Real love is built on transparency, on trust that's earned over time, not demanded in moments of crisis. And if you find yourself making excuses for someone, if you find yourself justifying things that don't add up, if you find yourself afraid to ask the hard questions because you don't want to ruin the illusion, then you're not in love. You're in denial. Thailand is an incredible place. It's beautiful, vibrant, full of opportunity and genuine people. But it's also a place where loneliness and desperation meet, and sometimes that collision creates situations like Marcus's. Not because Thailand is dangerous, but because it's far enough from home that people forget to bring their boundaries with them. They forget that the same instincts they trust back home still apply here. They think because the setting is different, the rules are different. But they're not. People are people everywhere. And wherever there's vulnerability, there's someone willing to exploit it. If you're planning to start over somewhere new, bring clarity with you. Bring your boundaries. Bring the voice in your head that asks questions and doesn't settle for vague answers. Bring your self-worth. Because hope is beautiful, but hope without discernment is just a way to get hurt. And you deserve better than that. Thanks for watching Bargirl Baddies. If Marcus's story resonated with you, or if you've been through something similar, drop your thoughts in the comments below. Share your story if you feel comfortable. And if you know someone who needs to hear this, send it to them. Sometimes, the best thing we can do for each other is be honest about the mistakes we've made so someone else doesn't have to make them too. We'll see you in the next one.